Hello and welcome back to the Fellowship of Beer. I'm Nick Smith. I am the Chief Beer Educator here at the Fellowship of Beer, and I'm also the co-owner, co-founder, head brewer and various other titles at Steam Machine Brewing Company in Newton Aycliffe, County Durham. Part of my role is to drink beer and talk about it so that you don't have to. Life is all about difficult decisions, so I hope I help you on your path not to drink beer. That's nonsense. Drink a beer if you're illegal drinking it. This is a series of videos about winter beers, about the beers that I enjoy the most in wintertime, especially around the festive season. Now, some of these beers have been strong, some of them have been refreshing, and some of them, like today's, have been strong. Strong is a theme in winter. Today's beer is the Quadruple. Following on from last episode on the Belgian Quadupels, this is the Quadrupel. These are the strongest of the Belgian beers. These are the strongest beers you see under the Trappist banner. They're also a relatively new kind of naming tradition. This is only a naming tradition that's existed since the 90s, calling a beer Quadrupel. On the back of successful beers being labelled as a tripel. We talked about in the last episode about British naming conventions for various beers, 2X, 3X, 4X, XB, AK, and all the various letters that come after it to donate strength and ingredients or hopping ratios. And we believe that is why the Belgian Triple has its name, from the number of X's on a barrel to denote strength. Now, one Dutch brewery, De Koningshaven, they are a Trappist brewery. We talked about Trappist beers last time as well, about beers which follow the certain tenets of Cistercian monks. Now, they brought out a La Trappe Quadrupel some decades ago to donate a difference between their double and their triple. You know, they were saying this is strong, dark beer. It's a name which has kind of stuck around. It's not a new invention of beer, but they can be likened to sometimes beers called Grand Cru or Grand Reserve in Belgium. Basically, strong, dark beers which aren't too dissimilar from English barley wines. This is my favourite Quadrupel. It is from the Halve Maan brewery in Belgium. Brewers De Halve Maan. It's a Bruges brewery. Bruges has a very rich history of brewing. This beer is called Straf Hendrik, and Straf Hendrik brand is used for their triples and their quadruples. It comes in a cage, so you know it's good. It also comes in a big bottle, so you know it's good. It's 11%. The Halve Maan brewery are famous for their Bruges Zot, which is, you know, your very common Bruges pale ale. It has a picture of a jester on the front. It's a reasonably hoppy beer. Ooh, beautiful. I can smell all those plummy raisin characters straight away. It's a dark beer, not as dark as a stout. I don't know its grist, but it doesn't particularly taste or smell too much of roast malts, of chocolate malts. So I think a lot of this comes from dark sugars, probably Belgian candy sugar, and dark crystal malts. These are malts which are being killed to a high temperature, not so they char and burn, but so they have a lot of caramelization. And that's exactly what happens with these beers. It brings out caramelization. For a beer so strong, it's so balanced as well. It's got like notes of sherry, caramel, toffee, raisins, a little bit of spiciness, medium bitterness there in the middle as well, just to balance it off. I've actually had this beer aged in red wine barrels. I believe they were Rioja barrels, and it was utterly delicious then. Or maybe it was a Bordeaux barrel. But either way, it was incredible. And I've had a version of this as well, aged on cacao nibs, like raw cocoa, and that was delicious too. So they do variations from time to time, but this is their classic. Beautiful beer. It's a fantastic winter beer. You know, for those people who love fortified wines, this is the beer to try if you are trying to get into beers. They've become very popular in America as well. A number of breweries in America tend to make a Belgian-style quad, as they call them. They've started to become popular in the British Isles too, to a lesser extent. This is just probably my favourite winter beer, even more so than the Imperial Stout. And we talk about sitting by the fire, or, you know, sitting wrapped up in a blanket somewhere, and this is the beer you can just sip away on. This is the kind of beer, even though it's heavy, is great with Christmas dinner. Now, on to the food pairing. Today is a double whammy of a food pairing and cooking with beer. We have here mince pies from the Brewers Pantry at Steam Machine Brewing Company. These mince pies are homemade. They have a very rich, thick, buttery layered, almost phyllo pastry to them. The mince meat has been soaked in brandy and imperial stout, and it's made with beef fat as well. And this, I believe, the mince meat was aged for over a week. The top of the pastry, instead of being pastry, is a shortbread kind of mix, and then they've just been dusted with icing sugar. Absolutely stunning, and they've been flying out of the brewery this time of year. The reason I've chosen this as our food pairing is we talked about in lagers, we talked about matching intensity of strength of flavours. Well, as full as this is with, you know, mincemeat, the kind of raisins, the currants there, and be soaked in booze, well, you get a lot of those same characters, like plummy raisin kind of characters from this beer as well. So they're very complementary. They work really well together because they have the same. Now, what's interesting if you food pair things of the same intensity of strength and the same kinds of strength is you bring other qualities out of the flavours of the food and the beer. So this by itself, we talked about those rich, plummy raisin, kind of like almost hints of date, little bit of, you know, red wine quality to it, certainly sherry, certainly port. Now from the mince pie, you get a lot of those too, as well as sweetness from the pastry. Rick, if you're watching this is just the best mince pies in the world. I never used to like mince pies till the other week. Well, I didn't dislike them. I'm not a fussy eater, but it was always something that was like, take it or leave it. Absolutely addicted to these. Now, having that sweetness now in my mouth and that boozy raisin quality, it means that we're going to lose some of that on this, even though it's also a very intense flavour. It means we've lost that flavour of booze, and we've lost some of those flavours of rich raisins. And instead, it's bringing out more red wine characteristics. It's bringing out some more of the kind of back hoppy bitter notes. And it doesn't suffer for it at all. It's an absolutely stunning beer. You also get like kind of notes of cocoa and chocolate. Maybe that's just my imagination because I've been talking about the cocoa version of this. It brings out more of the spicy quality because it's no longer hidden there behind the booze. But, you know, if you miss that, that's the wonderful thing about food pairings, is because that first sip, that carbonation, it strips away any residue of the food you're eating. So now when you taste it again, all that sweetness, all that raisiny goodness, all that plumminess, all that booziness comes rushing back. And the same with the food. After drinking this beer, you know, you go with the food that you're eating, you go beyond those boozy qualities, you go beyond those kind of raisiny qualities, and really, you're bringing out the flavours of the pastry, those buttery richness. You're bringing out the shortbreads. You're bringing out the sweetness. But then, in your second bite, all of that comes flooding back. Which is why I've paired these two things together. A big Belgian quadrupel with a lovely homemade mince pie. Now, the Halve Moon Brewery in Bruges boast that they are the last brewery in the centre of Bruges. Now, Bruges, if you've ever been, is a very quaint, cobbled, narrow streets place. It's very difficult to industrialise brewing and stuff like that. Now, I run a brewery and I understand the logistics problems of being in one of Northern Europe's biggest industrial estates, let alone in a tiny little medieval city. So to combat that, this brewery built some number of years ago a pipeline from the Halve Moon Brewery to their bottling plant 2 miles out of the city. I have no idea how that works, but I would love to see it. I imagine there's a lot of CO2 purging going on and pushing the beer through CO2 or nitrogen or something like that. But, you know, It just sounds so completely bonkers and very European. What should we do? Let's just build a 2-mile pipeline of beer. Apparently the people who helped crowdfund that were given beer in kind, which had been bottled, which, you know, I wish I crowdfunded that. That sounds something spectacular. So Quadrupels, such a wonderful style of beer, so boozy, so warming, perfect for these cold winter nights like this. If you have any food pairings for this, please let us know. We'd love to hear your food pairings. If you have cooked with a quad and you haven't wasted it because they're, you know, utterly delightful beer, how can you cook with this? No, cook with it. Fantastic dishes I'm sure you can make with this. You know, instantly I'm thinking of anything with red meat, dark. We talked about before that something like the triple, which is quite delicate, would be lost against venison. This is the kind of thing which could hold up against venison. We'd love to know your recipes. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know that you enjoyed and appreciate this video. And liking, sharing, commenting, and all that malarkey allows us to continue doing this wonderful content all for free. If you would like to know more about beer, then please check us out at fellowshipofbeer.org and have a look at the wide array of courses that we have coming out in 2022, including free courses as well. Cheers for watching. I'm Nick. This is the Fellowship of Beer. This is Winter Beers. Cheers.